She says, the 24th chapter of Matthew is presented to me again and again as something that is to be brought to the attention of. We are today living in the time when the predictions of this fulfill. Let our ministers and teachers explain these prophecies to those whom they instruct. Let them leave out of their discourses matters of minor consequence and present the truths that will decide the destiny of souls. So we will follow the instruction of God's mouthpiece. Matthew 24, 45 to 48. Appropriate food. Who then is a faithful and wise servant whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give to them meat when? In due season. Blessed is that servant whom his Lord when he cometh shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. But and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord doeth what? He delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken. The Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So we are to give meat, when again? Meat in due season. Meat in due season. So, how did we get here? We could have went to Jeremiah, but I chose to go through Amos. Everybody remembers when we get to Amos, which we'll get to in a short second, what does Amos see? Basket of summer fruits. Meat in due season, right? In the season. But let's see how we get here. Starting to Amos. Starts off with God first sending his what? Warning. Now, go through this with me, right? We're reading some Old Testament minor prophets. But as we study, the Bible lets us know that everything was written for who? It's for our learning. Us at the end of time, right? So, go through one of my Bible studies with me. We're going through Amos. Start off in chapter 3. Hear this word that the Lord hath spoken against you, O children of Israel. As Seventh Adventists, we profess to be spiritual Israel. So, who would be typical Israel? Or I should say, who would be our type? I gave you the answer already. No, SD would be the antitype, so who would be the type?
Like normal Israel?
Normal Israel, literal Israel, physical Israel, right? One said kept the commandments, does the other keep the commandments?
Yeah.
Saying, yes, literal Israel and antitypical Israel. SD, Seventh Adventists. Do they, one keep the commandments, did the other keep the commandments? Yeah. Did one believe in the sanctuary, does the other believe in the sanctuary? Does one eat certain kind of foods and one eats, or does one not eat certain kind of foods and the other doesn't believe eat certain kind of food? Did one have the spirit of prophecy of Jesus' first coming? Does the other have the prophecy of Jesus' second coming? So we see it. Just transfers. Same group of people, just different place and time. Doesn't change. The qualifications don't change. Hear this word said the Lord, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I have brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all families on the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquity. Christ is saying he's been faithful to us. Right? But as a church, have we always been faithful to Christ? No, we have not always been faithful to him. Right? You only have I known of all the families on earth. He says, shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? Shall there be evil in the city, and the Lord hath not done it? This, what immediately came to your mind? Or comes to your mind when you hear this? Say that again? No, not, but when remember, God accepts responsibility even if he allows the thing to happen. So he might allow Satan to bring the evil, but because God accepts responsibility, he says he brings the evil, right? So when it says here, shall there be evil in a city and the Lord hath not done it? No, talk about today. What happened today where they say, this is not of God, God is nowhere in this thing? COVID. COVID came to my mind as soon as I read this. Shall a trumpet be blown in the city? What's the purpose of a trumpet? To warn you, to wake you up. Shall there be evil in a city and the Lord hath not done it? They were saying God don't see. This has nothing to do with God. A worldwide pandemic, but God doesn't see. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the who? Prophets. The lion hath roared, who will not fear? The Lord God hath spoken, who can but what? Prophesy. For those who see it, they have to speak about it. Which we're doing here right now. Must speak about it. But God's warning was what? It was not heeded. Hear this word, ye kind of Bashan, that are in the mountain of Samaria, which oppress the poor. As Sister Nicole was talking about. Which crush the needy. Which say to their masters, bring and let us drink. So are there people suffering? Have people suffered through what we just went through over the last 2 years? Someone talked about, we had I won't say where it came from, but I received an understanding of an individual that I guess has been foremost in helping one of our churches working towards the end of evangelism. And so where this individual is living, as I understand it, I guess their house is falling apart and they're in dire straits. And I guess as far as I heard from the story, the church has done nothing to lift a finger to help the individual. You know, but you see it here, which say to their masters though, but then you look and at all the ribbon cutting ceremonies and at all the political events, there would be the leaders, rubbing shoulders, shaking hands. But the needy are crushed and the poor are oppressed. God looks down, he sees it. In the name of the people that are professing to be his. I have smitten you with blasting and mildew. When your gardens and your vineyards and your fig trees and your olive trees increase, the palmer worm devoured them. What does that sound like? That's coming next. Famine. That sounds like famine, right? Yet you have not returned unto me, saith the Lord. I have sent among you the pestilence. That one's obvious. After the manner of Egypt, your young men have I slain with the sword. What does that sound like? That's war. Yet ye have not returned unto me, saith the Lord. Is God sending all the signs now to signal to us what is coming? Yes. And he says, you will not return to me. I despise your feast days, and I will not smell your solemn assemblies. God said, how the church you're going every Saturday don't mean a thing to me. It means nothing. Though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them. Neither will I regard the peace offerings of your fat beasts. Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs. Whew. For I will not hear the melody of thy voice. Not listening to the worship. They hateth him that rebuketh in the gate. That's the man that's preaching. Jesus is coming. Time to get right. And they abhor him that speaketh how? Uprightly. For I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. They afflict the just. They take a what? Bible say it. So if you wonder if they take it, we wonder. But the prince said a couple times, I said, bring proof. You could have quote this for me. Because they said they take bribes. Bible says it is true. They take a bribe and they turn aside the poor in the gate from their right. So because people have less, they make them giving to you contingent on you turning from what is right to do wrong. We'll see, we'll come to more of that in a second. Woe to them that are at what? Ease in Zion. Resting like it's easy, like it's a chill time now. And trust in the mountain of Samaria, which are named chief of the nations, to whom the house of Israel came. Ye that put far away, watch this. Ye that put far away the evil day. What's that? The second coming. It's no time soon. It's way in the future. Ye that put afar away the evil day, and cause the seat of violence to come near, that lie on beds of ivory, themselves upon couches, and eat the lambs from out of the flock that's supposed to be taken care of. Ye which rejoice in a thing of naught. That reminds me of rejoicing in the schools and the hospital and the worldly accolades that we're getting. Ye which rejoice in a thing of naught, which say, have we not taken to us horns by what? Our own strength. This sounds very Nebuchadnezzar-ish. By our own strength. But behold, I will raise up. This is God speaking now. Behold, I will raise up against you a what? What nation is he going to raise up? The Chaldeans, the Babylonians. They're coming. The standard for righteousness for the judgment is set. Does God say he's about to send judgment? He's sending a nation to you. So the very next thing he declares is the standard for the judgment. Thus he showed me, and behold, the Lord stood upon a wall made by a plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand, and the Lord said unto me, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, a what? A plumb line. Then said the Lord, behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel. I will not again pass by them anymore. This is judgment time. God has given you time to prepare. No, he set the standard and it's time for judgment. He says he's not passing by anymore. No more teaching happening. Right? That's what a plumb line looks like. That's what a plumb line looks like. They use it for the equivalent of what we call a level today. Plumb line. Right? To make sure everything is straight. What happens after the standard of righteousness is set? Then we get to 8. And he said, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, a what? Now here's the point. Right? So we haven't got to the study yet. Just laying the foundation. He says a basket of summer fruit. If he sees the basket with the fruit in it, what has already happened? The harvest. The harvest. The basket have fruit in it. They're not on the tree. They're in the basket. The harvest. So he laid the plumb line. The judgment occurs. Then Amos looks and he said, summer fruit. Then said the Lord unto me, the what? End is come upon my people Israel. I will not pass by them anymore. Not coming back again. Probation has closed. Jeremiah. Actually, let's finish up with Amos. Hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land to fail, saying, when will the new moon be that we may do what? Sell corn. Like we say, when things going back to normal. Right? When they're going to open everything back up. And the Sabbath, when will the Sabbath end that we may do what? Set forth wheat, that we may buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. Talking about how you treat them. Right? Yea, and sell the refuse of wheat. Then I said, Jeremiah talks about that same thing. We've read it before. He said, the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and what? Yeah. We are not saved. We are not saved. So again, I ask, how did we get here? We got here by what? Self-deception. That's how we'll get there. By self-deception. Who is capable of deception? Satan is definitely capable of deception. Who else? Human beings. Anybody is capable of deception. Are you capable of deception? Am I capable of deception? Absolutely, right? And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? Jesus answered unto them, said unto them what? Take heed that no man deceives you. And you just told me, rightfully, so deception can come from where? Anywhere. Deception can come from anywhere. Could SDAs be deceived? Could SDAs do the deceiving? Okay. Okay. So tonight, what are we looking at? Self-deception. You don't see it, it's not coming. What greater deception can come upon human minds than a confidence that they are right when they are what? All wrong. The message of the true witness. Who's the true witness? True witness. The true and faithful witness. Jesus Christ, to the church of Laodicea, finds the people of God in a what? Sad deception. Yet honest in that deception. How are they honest? They know not that their condition is deplorable in the sight of God. While those addressed are flattering themselves that they are in an exalted spiritual condition, the message of the true witness breaks their security by the startling denunciation of their true condition of spiritual blindness, poverty, and what? Wretchedness. The testimony is so cutting and so severe, it cannot be a mistake, for it is the who? The true witness who speaks, and his testimony must be correct. Jesus don't get it wrong. So it is a true testimony that he is giving. The righteousness of Christ is the what? Only safeguard. We read this last time. And for this cause, God will send them what? Strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be what? Damned, who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Pleasure in unrighteousness. Those who will not be saved are those who pleasure in what? Unrighteousness. We have sins in our life. We are working to eradicate them. Victory over sin is the mantra. You see yourself in that sinful state and you accept it's not good enough. That's not pleasure in unrighteousness. Pleasure in unrighteousness is saying, I'll be okay with this small evil. I'll be okay with this little thing. Even though I know it's not right, I'll endure it. Right? Those who had pleasure in unrighteousness. Members on the church books, elders, deacons, conference presidents, all are susceptible to these what? Everybody. Nobody is exempt. Nobody is exempt. Righteousness of Christ is the only safeguard. This is a what? Rebellious people. What kind of children? Lying children. Children who will not hear the law of the Lord, which say to the seers what? So we see the Sunday law coming. But they will tell you what? See not. They say to the prophets, prophesy not unto us what? Don't show me the right things from the spirit of prophecy. Prophesy what? Speak unto us smooth things. Prophesy deceits. They want to hear deceits. Then they say what? Get you out of the way. You're in the way of the life they want to live, the things they want to do in this world. Turn aside out of the what? Turn aside out of the path. Now, cause the Holy One of Israel to do what? To cease from before me. Stop reminding me of God and his requirements. Don't come tell me about no sinless congregation. Cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. The people slumber on in their sins. They continue to declare themselves rich and have need of how much? Nothing. Many inquire, why are all these reproofs given? Why so much ado about some things, small wrong things that we're doing? Why do the testimonies continually charge us with what? Backsliding and with grievous sins. We love the truth. We are what? You see what the testament of them loving the truth is? We are what? But can Satan delude you? By making you, by worldly standards, you look like you're prospering. Could Satan send you that grand delusion? Be careful that no man deceive you. Satan will send you that delusion. We love the truth. We are prospering. We are in no need of these testimonies of warning and reproof. The righteousness of Joshua and Caleb is to be our safeguard during this time. Our allegiance must be to who? And not the what? Our allegiance must be to who? God and not the what? Alright. Remember, Israel is in Egypt and they're about to go free. This is a movement that is coming out of Egypt, right? A movement. They get to Canaan, it's a movement. Have they received instruction from God as to what to do when they get to Canaan? So what did God tell them? Go in and do what? Possess the land. Well, ultimately it was to possess the land. They decided they were going to spy it out first, but God said go in and do what? Possess the land. God said you will take it. All of it, right? When they get there, they sent in 12 spies. When the 12 spies came back, what did the movement want to do? Did God give instructions? What was God's instructions? Go in and possess the land. The movement came back and along with 10 of the spies said what? It's too great. There are giants in the land. We can't conquer it. 2 men stood up when the movement said something other than what God said. 2 men stood up and did what God said against the movement. Did God promise the movement that he would bring them all to Canaan? Did all of the movement get to Canaan? Who got to Canaan were the 2 men that went against the movement and did what God said? I don't know if you all understand what I'm trying to say here. It does not matter what a movement or church or an organization is doing if God has given instruction. You understand what I'm saying? If God has given an instruction, the whole movement can be doing something else. If you want to enter the promised land, you have to be Joshua and Caleb. You have to do what God has said. Has God given us instructions for where we are right now? Where we are. A message we have to carry. So if you do not carry that message, but you want to be with the movement, you will be with the movement and die in the wilderness. And those that do what God says, even if they have to do it disagreeing with the movement, they shall enter the promised land. We can only follow the SDA church in so much as it is following the what? Will of God. To follow even when going against the will of God is a what? Deception. God spake all these words saying, I am the Lord thy God which have brought thee out of the what? Now what does he liken the land of Egypt to? The out of the what? No, I'm showing how the movement, the full extent of how deluded a movement can get when it separates itself from the will of God. Watch. God says he brought you out of the land of Egypt. What does God consider the land of Egypt? A house of what? What is bondage? Slavery. God said that's the bond. You were in a house of slavery. That's what God called, right? Watch this. How bad can the self-deception get? And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab. So he calls them. Which said, so they respond to Moses, we will what? We will not come up. They were rebelling against Moses. They asked, is it a small thing that thou hast brought us up out of a land that does what? Do you understand? God say, I brought you out of Egypt, which is a land of what? Slavery. They get out of Egypt and say it was a land with what? Flowing with milk and honey. Delusion. Self-deceived. This was the movement going against Moses. Suffering from what? Self-deception. None of us are safe against these deceptions. Our anchor must be the what? And his testimony. Leaders are not faultless and to be followed, and leaders are not faultless and not to be followed when contradicting the word of God. Fair enough? Not to be followed. No. Let's get some present truth for your feet. Denmark becomes the first country to halt its COVID vaccination program. See the date on this? April what? 28th. But it says, far from scrapping its vaccination program altogether. However, the Danish Health and Medicine Authority said there will probably be a need to do what? Vaccinate against COVID-19 again in the fall. COVID-19, Bill Gates warns of a what? Even more transmissive and more fatal coronavirus variant. This is May 1st. Right? So, we believe that this man is privy to some insider information, yes? Yeah, we believe so. We know this man is who is an agent for. So when he speaks, you know, our ears perk up a little bit, but he doesn't speak with any authority. We're children of God. He doesn't speak with any authority. The only reason we care is because what he says matches what she says as a mouthpiece for God. He imparts their deadly taint and thousands perish by the pestilence. These visitations are to become what? More frequent and disastrous. So what he said, no, it matches with what God has said. So I'll listen. So I believe it's coming. So all intents and purposes, do we think we are out of this vaccination issue? Don't think we're out of it, right? Okay. Let's talk about some deceptions now. Do you think it's likely we'll see the return of mandatory vaccination? Yes. Talk about this deception issue. We're just laying a foundation here. Wolf in the midst of the flock. For those who listened last Thursday, we were on Observer. We talked about this a little bit. In an article published by the Adventist Review, the only reason we're discussing this is because it actually went into the publication. On April 22nd, that's of this year, entitled Viral Lies, James D. Stadish, who served in a rather prominent position for the GC, argued that Seventh-day Adventists who questioned the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines should be treated as miscreants and opposed. His carefully crafted innuendo suggested that what he called anti-vax extremists should not be a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It gets better. It gets better. Using pathos and unsupported scientific arguments, he strives to convince readers that those in the church who oppose the vaccine are disseminating information that is not rational, accurate, or true. We will attempt to put that to the test today. He goes on to suggest that what he refers to as lies and the efforts by such individuals to spread them may cause the death of a loved one. So you're responsible. And if we choose to believe, quote here, and if we choose to believe the lies and spread them, someone we love may very well be the next Adventist to die a horrible, lonely, completely unnecessary death. Remember, we guarding against deception in this tonight, in this theme we're talking about, right? He continues, to believe the COVID vaccines are not life-saving based on a spot of data here, a charismatic speaker there, by grasping at misinterpreted data and connecting unrelated dots into an incoherent theory, some that don't make sense, here, there, and everywhere, is exactly the approach that Adventists walked away from in the spiritual realm, and we need to do the same in the physical realm. He goes on to imply that those who stand opposed to the COVID-19 vaccines are on par with radical Islamic extremists. Here's the quote. And it's not just Adventist doctors. On February 22nd, the world learned that 8 healthcare workers vaccinated children for polio were assassinated in Afghanistan by Islamic extremists. As I write, however, the anti-vax extremism killing the most people isn't among traditional healers, whose place in society is threatened, nor is it among Islamic extremists in faraway lands. Today, the extremism has infected our church, and it is spreading one social media post at a time. Let's look at the self-deception. Let's go. Revelation 18:23. For thy merchants were the who? Great men of the earth, for by thy what? Sorceries were all nations deceived. This is speaking in regards to who? Babylon. This is the fall of the papacy at the end of time when God is passing judgment on her, the great harlot. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries. What does that word sorceries in Greek again? What is it? Pharmakia, from where we get the word pharmacy, referring to drugs. Referring to drugs. God is telling her the judgment of this great church, the apostate church, that for by thy drugs, thy pharmaceuticals, were all the nations what? Deceived. Now that alone could give a person a reason to say, you really can't make it mandatory for me. But we'll hold on. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Here we're only speaking against the mandatory of the vaccination. To vaccinate or not to vaccinate, you'll actually see it quoted here. This is a choice. But mandatory vaccinations should never, ever be done. I know Ephraim and Israel is not hid from me. For now, O Ephraim, again we read in Minor Prophets, thou committest whoredom, and Israel is defiled. They will not frame their doings to turn unto their God. So God is saying they will not come back to me. For the spirit of whoredom is in the midst of them, and they have not what? Known the Lord. And the pride of Israel, so they're proud, huh? They're proud in it. We're rich, and we have need of nothing. Their pride is in them. The pride of Israel doth testify to his face. Therefore shall Israel and Ephraim fall in their iniquity. Judah also shall fall with them. Watch the next verse. They have dealt how? Treacherously against the Lord. Therefore will I be unto Ephraim as a moth. What moth do? Eat your clothes. And to the house of Judah as rottenness. When Ephraim saw his what? And Judah saw his what? Then went Ephraim to who? Who is Assyria? Babylon. When the sickness came and the wounds came, you didn't trust in God. You went to who? Babylon for their elixir. You wanted what they had to offer instead of God's way of healing. This is just another one we could add to the mix for a reason why someone might say, you can't make it mandatory. But we'll keep going. We know this one. But I read through the rest of it and I said, you know what? For what we're doing here today, I have to include the rest of this code. I won't stop it where we usually do. There are many ways of practicing the healing art. God here speaking to his prophet. But there is only what? One way that heaven approves. God's remedies are the simple agencies of nature that will not tax or debilitate the system through their powerful properties. What are they? Pure air and cleanliness. A what? Purity of life and a firm trust in God are the remedies for the want of which thousands are dying. Yet, this is the part. This is where it comes to choice. She openly tells you, yet these remedies are going what? Out of date, because their skillful use requires work that the people what? Do not appreciate. All we're saying is, I understand the man that wrote the article. You don't appreciate it, it's okay. But don't try to call me an extremist because I appreciate it. But if you let them, even though they're inside, they will deceive you. They will deceive you from within. Be Joshua and Caleb and don't just follow the movement who say we cannot possess the land. Brethren, brethren, do not depend on the who? Or the president of the who? To do what? God has given what? To every man his work. When men look to the president of the conference as their helper, in all their difficulties, the bearer of their burdens, the counselor in their perplexities, they are doing the what? Very opposite of that which Christ told them to do. Record where it comes from, please. Christian Experience and Leadership, page 63. Quote it, send it out. Yeah, Christian Experience and Leadership, page 63. Do not depend. No, this don't mean that the individual cannot help you. But this just goes back to what I'm saying. If the movement says we cannot possess the land, you are to do what God instructed you to do. That is what you were instructed to do, what God told you to do. Here we go. I have been shown that the greatest reason why the people of God are now found in this state of spiritual blindness is that they will not what? Receive correction. The true witness condemns the lukewarm condition of the people of God which gives Satan great power over them in this waiting and watching time. The selfish, the who? And the lovers of sin are ever assailed with doubts. By the way, when I read that last quote, all that came to my mind is this is why they don't use her in church no more. This is why you can't open her books in church anymore. Because it lays everything open for everybody to see. Satan has the ability to suggest doubts and to devise objects to the pointed testimony that God sends. Now watch this. So has God sent us guidance that we just went through? From the Bible, we read from the Spirit of Prophecy said there's one way of healing. Has God sent guidance? But many think it a virtue, a mark of intelligence in them to be what? Unbelieving and to question and quibble. Clear as day. What we just read don't take no science. You don't need someone that graduated from theology school to explain what we read. But they think it's intelligent. The man who wrote that article probably thinks he's genius. I'm going to hit them where it hurts. Yeah. Mark of intelligence. She continues, those who desire to doubt will have plenty of room. God does not propose to remove all occasion for unbelief. He gives what? Evidence. No, this is the punchline for choice. He gives evidence, which must be carefully what? So does God have a way? And God said, don't just go my way, investigate it. Does the world have a way? God also says, do what? Investigate that. With a what? Humble mind and a teachable spirit. And all should, what is that word? Is that the same thing as force? All should decide from the what? Weight of evidence. So the minute with a quote like this, anybody who brings something mandatory to you, you have to say, hold on. Because this, my God tells me, I must see the weight of evidence and then choose. Then decide. No mandatory nothing. Many are deceived by what? Outside agencies. Let's take a look. Let's follow the bones in the bar. Actually, know this because I need this. This is a company called what? Lucis Trust. Some of us ain't have heard of it before. When it first started, it was called Lucifer's Trust. But some people had a very big issue with it being so satanic. So they said, okay, we'll abbreviate it and call it Lucis Trust. But it is still the same company that started as Lucifer's Trust. It's a publishing house for the occult principles. Paganism, witchcraft, right? This is legit, and it is one of the largest publishing houses in the world. In case you're wondering if this war that we're part of is real. The Lucis Trust is dedicated, it's from their side, to the establishment of a new and better way of life for everyone in the world based on the fulfillment of the divine plan of humanity. They're talking about here. The Lucifer. This is Lucifer they're talking about. It's educational. By the way, all the secret societies in the world subscribe to these beliefs, right? Freemasonry, Bilderberg, everybody subscribes to what we're going to be reading here. All of them. Its educational activities promote recognition and practice of the what? Spiritual principles and values upon which a stable and interdependent world society may be based. Where are we also hearing this from? That everybody needs to become interdependent. You can't have separate countries doing their own thing. Who's saying we must all unite? The Pope is also saying this, right? Interdependent world. Then they continue. The esoteric philosophy. That's a dead giveaway. This is the secret knowledge philosophy, right? This is what they're talking about here. The esoteric philosophy of founder Alice Bailey, who we know was one of the highest, she was like a high witch. She's a high witch in occultism, right? Alice Bailey informs its activities which were offered freely throughout the world in 8 languages. Now I'm just laying the foundation, right? Because when we say we're talking about deception, watch what's about to come next, right? World Goodwill Cycle of Conferences Project is a worldwide meditation group that joins together in a visualization to help spiritually enlighten the atmosphere on which world conferences vital to humanity's spiritual progress depend. So they're telling you here, we don't pray for small people. We come and meet and pray, and we'll see that the word is right here, but invoke certain things whenever the world leaders are meeting to have big conferences that are going to decide the future of this planet. They say we are the group that meets to spiritually connect with these individuals, right? This service initiative involves group invocation. You know what it is to invoke spirits? Okay. Of the divine will. Which divine again? Lucifer. And its direction as the will to good in the build-up to a select conference. Preparing in advance the right what? Spiritual atmosphere. Imagine what that looked like. In what we can't see. The demons surrounding that place. Right? In which it can take place. Now, the next slide, they tell you what conferences they support. The group imaginatively projects a lighted seed. Notice what they're saying to the imagination, right? To spiritism. They project a lighted seed of will energy and develops it into a pulsating heart center radiating the light. Now you hear all this talk about light, light, light. This is Lucifer, the light bringer. He's called the illuminated one, right? They worship him as his light side. You can worship him as Satan, the dark side, or Lucifer as the light side, right? The radiating light, love and power of the great invocation throughout the event and its participants. Well, let's see who these participants are. The cycle of conferences will be focused next on the upcoming, what's that? World Economic Forum. That's the 22nd to the 26th of May. Followed by the G.H.M Summit. Then you have the what? UN Ocean Conference. Then the UN Biodiversity Conference. The most recent focus, where they put their power, was the 26th Union of the Climate Change of the Parties, COP26. They're telling you the demons were there at COP26 of last year. This is not a joke, this is real. Invoking the spirits for all these conferences, this is real. And these are the people leading the world. World Economic Forum. So now you begin to know where these things are headed. They say food shortages in what? But now you know when they say this is on good authority. Because you see who is running behind them. Good authority. Globalists telling us what's next. The Great Reset agenda proposed by the World Economic Forum head, Klaus Schwab, is just one example of many discussions hidden where? They're not even hiding it. By globalists concerning their plans to use economic and social decline as an opportunity to quickly establish a new one world system based on what? Socialism. Socialism, we already know what that means. I'm dependent on the government for my needs. And if the government controls my needs, they can tell me what to do. Their lies, no buy, no sell. Right? And technocracy. The primary problem with discerning what the globalists are planning is not uncovering secret agendas. They tend to openly discuss their agendas if you know where to look. If you know where to look, they don't hide it. Now, let's see. Pope Francis tackles climate change with council of who? Cardinals. The Pope and the Cardinals focus particularly on preparing for the, what is that? You think that other group will be helping them support with this? Yeah. COP27. So they're already planning for this year. Now look what he's saying, calling for. COP27, United Nations Climate Change of Conference, to be held in Egypt in November of 2022. He says, can we, as a church, along with other denominations and religions, give a voice to these concerns? Was the question put forward for discussion. He says, humanity will be what? Judged by God if it fails to effectively deal with the climate crisis. Francis cautioned, there is no alternative to battling climate change. But we already know, well, yes, he does believe in a God here, because he said humanity will be judged by what? But we know which God he's talking about. And the dragon gave him his power, seat, and great authority. Right? This was interesting to me. We're going to come right back to that, because I only found this out this week. I did not know this before this week. We have gone as a Bible study group, and we had meetings with the Mormons before. We sat and we listened and we let them explain, you know, but they took a while to explain, so we didn't actually get a chance to rebut. But I did not know this, and I'm going to make a point at the end to why I put this in here, right? What does this say? Mother in heaven. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints teaches that all human beings, male and female, are beloved spirit children of heavenly parents. Our Heavenly Father and this understanding is rooted in the scriptural and prophetic teachings about the nature of God, our relationship to deity, and the godly potential of men and women. The doctrine of a heavenly mother is a cherished and distinctive belief among Latter-day Saints. I did not know they believed in this. I did not know that. What immediately came to my mind, though, is even now, do we see the world gathering around this God the Mother, consecrated through Roman Catholicism by Mary. You see this elevation, the veneration of Mary. But if even the LDS believes in a mother, then all of a sudden I'm starting to see a place of unity where they can all come together. So now you have the point of the first day of the week observance. You have the point of they all believe in a mother or a queen of heaven. And we already read Jeremiah and what God said about the queen of heaven, right? God said every time you say that, it does what? Every time you say that, it just provokes me to anger. Every time you mention a queen of heaven, that's what God said. He said it provokes me to anger.
There's no queen of heaven.
He said that there's no queen of no heaven. Right? While there is no record of a formal revelation to Joseph Smith, that's their prophet, on this doctrine, some early Latter-day Saint women recalled that he personally taught them about a mother in heaven. That's why the Bible says, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this, there is no light in them. Darkness, pure darkness. No light in them. Now, while all of that is happening, where would the church be? Where would those that have the truth, the light to illuminate the world, the true light, the three angels' messages, where would that be in a time like this? Well, let's see. Just one of many. East Bay Ukrainian Peace Concert raises money for refugees. Not a bad thing. Let's see. And what's that word? Interfaith Ukrainian Peace Concert fundraiser will be held when? What is Saturday? The Sabbath. At the where? In Antioch. I'm not going to read the address. The concert will feature this name: a merited artist of Ukraine who will play the bandura, a Ukrainian musical instrument that dates back to the 7th century. Originally used for accompaniment of epic folk ballads and occasional folk dances. Sabbath. In the church. In the church. On Sabbath. Continued. Also featured will be Ukrainian singers and dancers, an organist, a professional trumpeter, a Jewish cantor, a Filipino choral choir, and more. The concert is sponsored by the Ukrainian-American Coordinated Council, the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County, and the Interfaith Peace Project. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Just because the movement say we cannot possess the land, follow what God say. Follow what God say. This is not a time to blindly follow. No question. This is, they're about to put this thing on. Do you think that this could have gone by without the leaders know what's about to happen? They must know that this thing is about to happen in the church. They must have received approval for the use of the church from up top. Because the leaders have accepted it, does that make this okay? No. And all we're saying is, listen, you have to know when to separate yourself and say, Joshua and Caleb will I be. For me and my house, we will serve the Lord. She says, we're coming on to the end. My ministering brethren, as you stand before the people, speak of those things that are essential, those things that will instruct. Teach the great practical truths that must be brought into the life. Teach the what? Saving power of Jesus, in whom we have what? Redemption, even the what? Forgiveness of sins. That sounds like teach righteousness by faith to me. Teach the sanctuary to me. That's what that sounds like, right? But then she goes on. Very next paragraph. Ministers should present the what? Sure word of prophecy as the what? Foundation of the faith of Seventh-day Adventists. The prophecies of Daniel and Revelation should be carefully studied, and in connection with them, the words what? Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world. In connection with them, the words, behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world. Good, Brother Lance? Good. We know this one, in a special sense, because I'm going somewhere with this. In a special sense, Seventh-day Adventists have been set in the world as what? Watchmen and light bearers. Heavy task, watchmen for the world. To them has been entrusted. Are we in a time right now where we need it as watchmen? Is Rome circling the walls, ready to bring on this world the likes of things they've never seen before. And it's our job to tell them. To tell them what's coming and to tell them how to get ready. That they need the righteousness of Christ to stand. Right? To them has been entrusted the what? Last warning for a perishing world. On them is shining wonderful light from the wheel. Word of God, truth from the Bible. They have been given a work of the most solemn import. What is that work? The proclamation of the first, second, and third angel's message. Is this a mouthpiece for God speaking? If someone was to come and say otherwise, is it very possible that they're trying to deceive you? If they're a leader speaking otherwise, does that mean that they're trying to deceive you any less? Does it mean they're trying to deceive you any less? If they were to say something opposite? Still deception, right? Okay. There is no other work of so great importance. They are to allow how much? Nothing else to absorb their attention. The most solemn truths ever entrusted to mortals have been given to us to proclaim to the world. The proclamation of these truths is to be our work. The world is to be what? Warned. And God's people are to be true to the trust committed to them. So then I ask the question. I say here. I'll ask the question after. Do not let any man deceive you, or be self-deceived into doing what? Smiting your fellow servant who is giving what? Meat in due season. Folks may not be here that may fall into that category, but they might watch it on YouTube. And this is to let them know, just because leaders may have taken a stance regarding what we're doing here, which is the proclamation of the three angels' messages. We've seen from the Bible, because we know Revelation 14 well, where it talks about gives the three angels' messages, and we just saw from the prophet that that is to be our work in this time. So here we stand, the movement and Joshua and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb are saying we can go in and possess the land, and we are taking the message. If you want to stand with the movement, all I'm saying is be very careful while you smite your fellow servant. Be careful what you're saying about glorious hope as we go to spread the three angels' message in that mighty way that the majority of the movement has neglected. There are a few within there that are doing the task as well as they can. Sometimes they detail the pushback that they're receiving. All I'm saying is for individuals, as you may jump up and want to speak here and speak there, speak in ignorance and say things, be careful, because Matthew 24 is speaking of you. You're smiting the fellow servant, Joshua and Caleb, that are doing what God said to do. Let's read it again. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his house, to give them meat when? In due season. Blessed is that servant, whom the Lord, when he cometh, shall find doing so. But, and if that evil servant shall say, will, in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming. It's not now Jesus is coming. It's not now. And shall begin to smite his fellow servants, the ones who are doing the right thing, and to eat and drink with the drunken. What are they drinking, by the way? What kind of wine? Babylonian wine. Drink with the drunken. The Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with who? The hypocrites. In closing, read. The third angel's message was to be given. The minds of the believers were to be directed to the heavenly sanctuary where Christ had entered to make atonement for his people. The Sabbath reform was to be carried forward. The breach in the law of God. Where is that breach found? In the fourth commandment. In the fourth commandment is where it's broken. The Sabbath commandment. The breach in the law of God must be made up. The message must be proclaimed with a what? Loud voice, that all the inhabitants of the earth might receive the warning. Then, she continues, the people of God must do what? Purify their souls through obedience to the what? Truth. And be prepared to stand how? Without fault before him at his coming. Question. Does that say that he will make you without fault when he comes? How do they get these things mixed up? How do they not see? You know, Brother Paul and I were, actually it's probably better to, he didn't give his testimony before he left, Elder Philip. He gave it to me personally, and I almost don't want to give it, because he may come back and have the opportunity to share it himself. But sinless congregation, righteousness by faith, right, is what he has experienced incredible suppression for. Simply believing and teaching that you can be sinless while on this earth made a Seventh-day Adventist church say, no more of you in here. Understand, listen, when we talk about these things on YouTube, I was talking to Brother Paul last night after we left. And I have to do this justice to make you guys aware. As we see this from the spirit of prophecy and we see it from the sanctuary, understand, when you leave here and you take this doctrine, not just something we believe, because we see it from the Bible and from the spirit of prophecy. This makes it clear to stand without fault before him at his coming. So when Jesus comes, what do you have? No fault. You have no fault when he comes. That's the sinless congregation. If you take this doctrine to the majority of the Seventh Adventist churches, they will think that you are coming in preaching apostasy and false doctrine. I'm telling you that straight up. It will not be well received. Most of the theology schools at this point have rejected this. They don't teach this anymore. I'm saying this so that if you engage in a conversation with someone and they find this idea novel and push back at you, don't be surprised. Because predominantly the faith no longer believes this. No, just as with Joshua and Caleb, if you do not believe it, can you ever achieve it? And therein lies the problem. If you don't have the faith, God can never make you sinless. Can't happen. At least as we stand here, we're leaving. Does everyone feel guarded? Do you feel like your mind has been fortified against deception? Even if it may come in the form of leadership. With eloquence, it may be well spoken. It will come from someone that graduated one of our colleges or one of our universities. It may come from a pastor that's been preaching for 20, 30, 40 years at the crusade. We don't know what you'll hear. I'm saying, if you hear it, you need to be able to discern for yourself and say, hey, what I'm hearing there don't sound too right. Not just because a man say it means I accept it. They must show you from the word. Are we understanding that? So let's all commit ourselves. You see, I'll take a lot of pictures, go back and read them again. Go back and study the verses again. Do it for yourself so that you have it in your mind. And even if I come after this and say, hey, guys, you know, I made a mistake, it's not true, then you start doubt me too. You sell out. Maybe then catch you, corner or something. You understand? That's how we do it.